Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Unification Theological Seminary virtual faculty roundtable. As many of you know, in this setting, faculty members of UTS are invited to share on an academic topic or an area of research of interest to the greater UTS community. And so tonight we're very pleased to be able to welcome many of you from across the United States and from around the world, both faculty, staff, students, and alumni. This faculty event has become truly an international event. So thank you for joining us, no matter where you are in the US or in the world. This will be an opportunity for you to ask for questions tonight during the program. And I just want to mention to you that if a question does occur to you, please feel free to type it into the chat at any time. And at the appropriate moment in the Q&A session, your question will be addressed. So before we proceed any further, I just want to let people to know that as Dean of Enrollment Management, I'm very happy to help you with any questions you might have about courses or studies at the seminary. I'll be typing my contact information to the chat box, so please feel free to note it down. If you have interest in studying at UTS, please reach out to me. Or if you know anyone else that might be interested in studying, please feel free to share my contact information with them. So to begin our program, I want to invite up UTS President Dr. Thomas Walsh, who's going to offer some welcoming remarks. Dr. Walsh is a 1979 graduate of the Unification Theological Seminary. Dr. Walsh went on to earn his PhD at Vanderbilt University in its School of Religion, where he specialized in the study of religion and ethics. And of course, in addition to his role as UTS president, Dr. Walsh serves as chairman of the Universal Peace Federation International. So we're really grateful that Dr. Walsh took the time today to be with us here. And let's welcome up Dr. Walsh for his words of welcome. Dr. Walsh.
Thank you very much, Dean Boyd. Thank you for your great service to UTS in such a critical area as enrollment management. It's great to work with you. Welcome, everyone, to this faculty roundtable. I'm personally very excited to be here and to hear from our main speaker, Dr. Noda. This is a series where our distinguished faculty can present some of their recent research or aspects of their own courses. So I thank you for being here. As Dean Boyd said, there will be time for Q&A as we, after Dr. Noda gives his presentation. I'd like to take a minute to say a little bit about Dr. Keisuke Noda. He's not only a faculty member, professor of philosophy here at UTS, but he serves in a critical administrative role, initially as the academic dean, and more recently has moved up to the position of associate provost that is involved with Dr. Ward in overseeing the academic affairs of UTS. He is Japanese, and he studied physics at Waseda University. Physics wasn't complicated enough, so he wanted to study philosophy. So he did a master's and PhD at the New School of Social Research based in Manhattan, which is really a flagship graduate university, and with specialization in areas of hermeneutics and phenomenology that we're going to learn about today. He's published 3 books, Volume 1 and Volume 2 of narrative history of philosophy, and he has written a philosophical novel called Even Then, I Keep Living, which addresses the topic of suicide, extremely important topic. He has a diploma certificate from the Viktor Frankl Institute, and he is an expert on the work of Viktor Frankl and has spoken at their international conferences. Some of the courses he teaches at UTS include philosophy of religion, ethics, and social justice. He said to me that this will be a mini philosophy seminar, so I'm eager to learn. In preparing for this evening, I thought, let me just browse through the writings of Heidegger and Husserl, and quickly I got bogged down, and I thought, well, I really need to hear from Dr. Noda. His topic, the intersection of phenomenology and religion. And I think we're all going to enjoy this presentation and learn a lot. Please welcome Dr. Keisuke Noda.
Thank you, Dr. Walsh. Okay, thank you everyone for joining tonight. And this is a page of the special issue on the Religion Journal, the intersection of phenomenology and religion, and I served as editor for this journal. And that's where the topic comes from. So this is a mini philosophy seminar on the topic of the intersection of phenomenology and religion. So I'm going to cover 3 topics. First, what is a phenomenology? Miss Ute Delaney, UTS registrar, told me that she took a look at Wikipedia article on phenomenology to understand what it is, and she was confused. And it is true that I took a look before coming to here, and it's so uninteresting and confusing that if that is a topic I'm going to speak on, I wouldn't come here. So at least my presentation would be clearer than Wikipedia and a little more interesting than Wikipedia article. So second, what is the issue on this topic? And the third, I want to touch on what is the critical issue for philosophy. So I will give some twist on that. Then my presentation is more on the philosophy side than religion side. Okay, what is religion? Then this is already a complex issue. And setting the boundary or demarcation of religion is not easy. There are so many religions. And there are questions. Are there common essence to all religions? Or religion are more or less similar to each other, but there is no common essence overlapping all. So it's better to use family resemblance. Just like family members resemble each other and more or less similar, but there is no common essence. So Wittgenstein concept. And the other issue is your belief stance. And if you have one belief, then can you really understand and speak of other religion you have never experienced? In other words, can you observe other religions as a bystander, or do you have to live it to understand it? In other words, is you are being an integral part of religious knowledge? So there are a number of issues there. So because religion is complex, how to approach become an issue. And for this reason, phenomenology comes up. Because phenomenology is an attempt to approach the phenomena to disclose as they show themselves. So the motto of phenomenology is to the things themselves. Okay, I will explain in some layers, play. So this is Act 1, Stage 1. What is phenomenology? Edmund Husserl developed a philosophical approach against reductionism, such as psychologism and historicism. And his reductionism is a position to reduce all phenomena to a single phenomenon and explain all phenomena from that chosen phenomenon. So psychologism is one example, and it tries to reduce all phenomena to psychological phenomena. So simply speaking, you're going to explain every phenomena from a psychological point of view. That is psychologism. And similarly, historicism is trying to reduce all phenomena to historical phenomena. In other words, if you think that you can explain all phenomena from historical perspective, and that's historicism. And philosophical discourses were often driven by presuppositions we took for granted. Reductionism is an example. And if you look at the philosophy of mind today, almost all philosophers try to explain mind-body issues, such as origin of the self-consciousness, origin of consciousness, from the mechanism of the brain. And Husserl tried to establish a philosophical approach without presuppositions. And the motto was to the things themselves. So phenomenology is a philosophical approach to faithfully describe the phenomena. And Husserl examined the concept of experience. And if you look at the modern philosophers, Descartes, Locke, or Kant, or whomever, they have a primary concept of experience, and that is sense experience. Sense experience means experience you can experience by physical five senses, seeing, smelling, touching, and so forth. And if we understand the context of those modern philosophers, we can understand some way. Modern science was emerging at that time, and modern philosophers tried to establish the validity of a scientific discourse, and they tried to establish reason and experience, not the church, as the authority to determine truth or falsity of knowledge. And Husserl thought modern concept of experience is too narrow and limited. And if you see experience itself, we can see its diversity and far more rich. Experience can include hoping, loving, willing, remembering, and so forth. And a sense perception is only one kind of experience. And Husserl developed a philosophical approach to describe human experience fully and faithfully. Then he set the motto to the things themselves, and bracket doxa, your belief stance or presuppositions. And he believed that we can achieve presuppositionlessness. And in case of Husserl, he adapted his teacher, Brentano's idea, and he looked at the consciousness and identified its unique characteristics and its intentionality. If we looked at the consciousness, it is the relation of the mental acts and the object of mental acts, such as if it's loving, there are object of loving. If you're hoping, and object of hope, and so forth. So he tried to give analysis of the relationship of the mental acts and its object. So phenomenology is a philosophical approach, at least for Husserl, to articulate the essential characteristics of each kind of experience, and analysis of the mental acts and object in consciousness. And for example, phenomenology of perception. What does it do? Question is, what makes perceptual experience distinct from other kinds of experiences? And articulate the essential characteristics that make the experience perceptual. And if you look at human perception, it is vision-centered. And if you're a dog, probably your map will be smell-centered. And if you're a bat, probably you will draw three-dimensional map with your special senses. Then, thus, phenomenology of XYZ born. X can be any kind of experience. And Husserl, for example, published Phenomenology of Internal Time Consciousness, and he described how we experience time. And scholars of religion developed phenomenological studies of various kinds, such as phenomenological studies of prayer, phenomenological study of rituals in Hinduism, and so forth. And usually, scholars select a kind of religious phenomena according to one's perspective of faith. Many of them are in Judeo-Christian faith, but some of them try to broaden the definition of religion and broader experiences of spirituality in various religions. And yet still, how to approach is an issue. And this is the first stage, Act 1. But the thing is a little more complicated if you look at the phenomenology itself. There are two big related questions within phenomenology. The two are related. Is presuppositionless knowledge possible? And is understanding and observation or neutral intuition, or is it interpretation involving your being? Yeah, let me elaborate. Husserl thought, yes, presuppositionlessness is possible. We can, bracket all presuppositions, and we can see, intuit, and describe the essence of experience phenomena. And Heidegger, who is a direct student of Husserl, and Husserl expected Heidegger to be his successor, and said, no, pre-understanding is necessary, and understanding is interpretive and hermeneutic. And this is just like, Plato and Aristotle, direct student, and the student can surpass the teacher and say no. So it's very interesting. And let's consider this, the question of the possibility of philosophy in Plato. Plato raised this question. If you know X, why do you seek? If you do not know X, how can you start seeking? And how do you know what you found is what you are looking for? So without some implicit understanding, you cannot seek, you cannot say it is what you are looking for. So this is a kind of understanding of truth in Heidegger. Human being has an implicit understanding of philosophical truth, and the task of philosophy is to articulate and make it explicit. And this Heidegger's view resonates with Augustine's teacher within, or truth within the self. You have, this is Augustine's view, you have the inner truth or a true teacher within yourself. You can make a judgment of truth because you have implicit inner truth, true teacher within the self. A teacher outside of you is just like a midwife, that the outside teacher prompt you. But yet when you say Yes, I understand that. I see. What happened is the teacher within you is telling you what that is. So understanding for Heidegger is a circular process. He used the term, enter into hermeneutic circle. Heidegger agreed with Husserl to avoid dogmatic assumptions, but disagreed with him by arguing presupposition-less knowledge is impossible, and human understanding is not observational seeing, but a dynamic hermeneutic process. And if you look at Husserl, he sought for certainty of knowledge, and he used the term apodictic certainty, just like Descartes, whose denial is impossible. And Husserl was a mathematician, and he's an essentialist. So phenomenology for him is an approach to describe the essence of each kind of experience. But Heidegger set meaning as the central perspective. And if you think about a meaning is diverse and contextual. So for Heidegger, phenomenology is possible only as hermeneutic phenomenology, in other words, interpretive phenomenology, and look into how interpretation is carried out. And because Heidegger approached the question of being or existence from a perspective of meaning, various contextual relationships are unfolded. Meaning is not in a single object, but it is disclosed in contextual relationship. And for example, think about your life. Now, suppose you had a rough life, and you committed a crime, and you stayed in the state prison for 20 years. Now, what's the meaning of your prison life? Suppose after you got out from the prison, you came to UTS and you got a divinity degree and you became a prison minister. So the chapter of life after your prison life changes the meaning of your prison life. In other words, the chapter you are going to build in your life will change the meaning of the life in your previous chapters. So that way, meaning is not solid in a thing or object, but it is a contextual matter, and it changes according to the multiple contextual relationships. And Heidegger articulated how being of a human is temporally structured. For example, your existence is moving toward the death. For this reason, time is very precious. So implicitly, time is operating in your discourse or thinking. So even when you measure distance, you tend to measure distance by means of time. How long does it take? Is it meaningful to get a cup of coffee by driving 10 miles away? In that way, time really shapes the way you are. And Heidegger developed various concepts such as being towards death and how time shapes your discourse. And you are not living in empty space, but you are already connected to the world and people, and even your identity is defined in terms of relationship, your relationship to other people. So you are being in the world. That's one term. So human being meaningfully exists in a teleological, that means the purposeful, social, cultural, historical relationships. So we live in meaning-filled world. And geometrical space-time is a derivative and a theoretical construct. This is Heidegger's view. And for example, this is the example Heidegger gives in Being and Time. Materiality of hammer is disclosed when it is broken. The primary sense of being of a hammer is not its physical materiality, but its utility within meaning-filled human life. And similarly, your being, when you are dead, materiality of your being as a corpse is disclosed when you are dead. And another example, geographical place is meaning-filled. So we distinguish holy ground and other places, and meaning is attached to the place. And Heidegger argued this is the primary, and the geometrical space is the secondary. And some phenomenologists wrote a book on phenomenology of space and the place, and how we allocate and distinguish space according to the meanings. And even the human body, it's not the physical bulk. Suppose you give your family photo to me, and if I said, "Oh, thank you," and I put your picture, family picture, onto my chest, and I'm fine. But if I put your picture under my butt, and you think I need a mental health therapist or something. So that way, a body also is meanings are allocated in different parts of the body. And Heidegger also challenged subjectivity objectivity category. And if you presuppose this category as fundamental, you will put meanings into the category of the subjective. So then you presuppose the primacy of objectivity equal physical materiality equal will equal primary sense of being. So in order to articulate meaning as a central and primary sense of being, and Heidegger challenged this subjectivity objectivity category itself. And he gave a lengthy criticism against Descartes in Being and Time. And in order to establish the primacy of meaning in ontology, he had to challenge subjectivity objectivity category itself. And the primary sense of being is its meaning in context, and a physical materiality is a derivative. So later, Husserl recognized the limit of his early attempt, and he characterized it as a Cartesian beginning. And he began phenomenology of life world at his later stage. And from this, all kinds of phenomenology flourished. Alfred Schutz developed phenomenology of social world, and Merleau-Ponty recognize the context is not the social world. Our body itself is a context. Our spirit is embodied. We have a body. So how having a body shapes our perspective and behaviors. And it's interesting. If you look at the body, we realize that we are either male or female, and sexuality appears. And actually, if you look at the history of philosophy, all the way when they talk about the human being, that is a sexless, neutral human beings. But Merleau-Ponty pointed out, no, body is a context, and there are sexuality of discourses. And Gadamer is Heidegger's student, and he explored truth not only in science, but how truth is disclosed in art and history, and expanded hermeneutic phenomenology. And he presented a number of key understandings, and one of them is he defined understanding as a fusion of horizons. Like when you try to understand the book, you have your frame of interpretation, and the author has a frame of interpretation, and also you have your historical context. The author has unspoken social, historical, cultural context. So understand what is going on in understanding is horizon fused, fusion of horizons. And Gadamer argued that there is an element of prejudice, authority, and history working on in human understanding. This is a direct challenge to Enlightenment thinkers. The Enlightenment thinkers try to, come up with, interpretation-free knowledge, objective knowledge, free from prejudice, authority, and history. But Gadamer argued it's not really possible. It's already there. And for the intersection of phenomenology of religion on this topic, this poses a question about if you want to write something on this topic, it poses a question about your approach and your take on phenomenology. And for example, is presuppositionlessness possible by mental acts alone, such as bracketing your presuppositions or belief stance? And this is what Husserl does. Then, for example, would say, no, it's not possible. Practice is necessary to attain emptiness. And Dogen, for example, 13th century Japanese Buddhist thinker, held a similar concept to Heidegger, being time, time being. And he argued that religious truths become available by embodying it. So in religion, not I have the truth, but I am the truth, I am the way. So in other words, without embodying it, emptiness is not possible. So this is another challenge. So, so far, I described some internal issue in the phenomenology, and I'm going to go to the place, Act 3, and a final stage, and a little bit about philosophy. What is the most critical issue in philosophy? Question is, what shapes your approach? What guides your discourse? What limits your horizon? Limit of what you can see, and how to begin, and how you set your stance and settings. So this may involve the challenge and the changes of fundamental concepts, such as being, time, space, relation, which we take for granted. But this is extremely difficult, but rewarding. And for example, Heidegger's original aim of being and time. His original aim was to articulate how each philosopher's understanding of time shapes and limits, and that the philosopher's discourse. So he attempted to articulate the problem of each philosopher's implicit underlying understanding of time and how it shapes and limits and his discourse. He tried to do it for Descartes, Kant, and everyone. And we write the entire history of philosophy. And he tried to deconstruct. And the term deconstruction came from Heidegger and now used by continental philosophers. But anyway, he tried to do it. So if you look at the first edition of Being and Time, he laid out his plan. And the current contents of Being and Time is preparatory analysis. So he, as a preparation to carry out this task, he said that as a preparation, I need to give analysis of being of a human being. And he did it, and he published it. So just one chapter, he published it. The rest of them are empty. And he tried to do it at the later life, but he gave up. And finally, he said he can't do it. And he later announced giving up the project. So when you think about a philosopher's approach, you need to dig into what really guides his or her approach. It often limits the horizon, the limit of what you can see. And it is a meta-philosophical setting that guides his or her thoughts. And if you challenge or revise a fundamental concept, you may be able to transform the history of philosophy. So if you look at Descartes and Husserl, they had a certain concept of knowledge, it's certainty. And because they want to have a certainty in knowledge, they oriented toward essences. And for them, paradigmatic discipline was mathematics. And the meta-philosophical assumption was often taken for granted without awareness. And some do not pay attention to the approach and just start talking. An example is the speculative metaphysics. This is, I think, a dead approach. And Heidegger, he intentionally set the meaning to approach being. And for that reason, contextual relationship are disclosed. Context can be a social context, and a body is a context, as Merleau-Ponty did, and one after another. So he developed the phenomenology as hermeneutic phenomenology. And in his case, he had a strong background in humanities. So when the subject matter is very complex, one's approach becomes critical. And the researchers encounter philosophical question of how to approach. For example, mental disorder is another very complex subject. So some psychiatrists are trying to find the better approach to deal with this complex issue of mental disorders. So Binswanger, for example, a Swiss psychiatrist, applied, found the Heideggerian approach insightful. Then he applied Heideggerian approach to mental disorder and developed the Dasein analysis. I attended their conference last year, and there are still some Dasein analysts in Europe and the United States, but not many anymore. And Viktor Frankl used Max Scherer, another phenomenologist, and his approach is more ethical. And Max Scherer's approach and also Heidegger's approach to being, and developed logotherapy. So your implicit or explicit setup affect your approach and opens or closes what you can see. What is the issue? Within phenomenology, you see two approaches: Husserlian, observational approach, and Heideggerian hermeneutic existential approach. They are parallel, I think, to two modes of understanding: scientific observational mode, where the self is detached. So you are outside of the subject matter and you observe and watch. And the religious or in existential or hermeneutic mode, the self is involved. In philosophy of science, if you look at the philosophy of science, Thomas Kuhn articulated the hermeneutic dimension in scientific knowledge. So later in his career, Thomas Kuhn rephrased his well-known concept of paradigm as a hermeneutic core and tried to bridge natural science with social human sciences and other humanities. So this opened a hermeneutic approach to both sciences and religion, And Viktor Frankl, for example, presented multidimensional pluralist hermeneutic model, which opens a hermeneutic sphere for multiple perspectives in various sciences and religions. And this is what I'm studying on now. So I conclude, intersection of phenomenology and religion. What is the critical issue? The critical issue is how you set your stance. And your stance orients, limits the horizon of what you can see and do. So the most critical issue in philosophy is not how much you can develop your theory, but how to start. And you can develop a huge theory, but they can go into the trash can. And you can develop a garbage, but how to start is critical. Thank you very much for your participation.
Thank you, Dr. Noda.
Thank you.
That was fascinating, very informative and insightful, and you kept to the time. So I thank you for that. And I appreciate you drawing on, I wasn't aware that Viktor Frankl had been influenced by Husserl and phenomenology, or that the work of Max Scheler, who I think did a lot on empathy as a kind of a analysis of that from phenomenological perspective. But I just wonder if you want to, just a couple of quick things before I turn to the questions in the chat, and we have 3 or 4 already. Did you feel an affinity with continental philosophy with your background in both physics and in kind of growing up in Japan, and perhaps growing up in a life world of Buddhism and Shintoism? Or, I had a colleague at Vanderbilt who was a member of Rishoku Sakai, and we were good friends, and he was also at Vanderbilt Divinity School getting his doctorate, and he was studying Heidegger. And at the time, I didn't quite see the link, but he would share about how he felt some affinity between Japanese way of thinking, whether it's Zen, as you pointed out, and Heidegger in particular, but maybe more broadly continental thought as compared with, say, American pragmatism, or kind of the more Anglo-American traditions, linguistic philosophy, and that.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. I think Eastern thought in general takes a holistic approach, and even the language is shaped pretty much in a contextual context to define the meaning of the term. So even by looking at the language, you can see who is speaking to whom. And because of the context, social context and a social relationship defines what kind of a verb, changes is made. So that kind of, I think, holistic contextual approach has affinity to this continental philosophy in general. So therefore, analytic philosophy was and has never been popular in the Far Eastern countries, but continental philosophy is very it become very popular. And furthermore, Heidegger has a very good familiarity with Taoism. And before Heidegger began writing Being and Time, there are some studies on how Heidegger digged into the Taoism and applied the Taoist idea into he's also familiar with the Western tradition. So therefore, he somehow put them together and translated it into the Western context. So it is more like a bridge. So between the, I think Heidegger made some kind of bridge between Taoist thought and Western, metaphysics.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Just before if I can, maybe just one more, the interface between theology and philosophy has been significant. You mentioned Augustine and the impact of Neoplatonism, Plotinus and others, and of course Thomas Aquinas and Aristotle, and in the more modern era you had the influence of existentialism on various theologians, and of course Marx had, and I think we're less familiar with the kind of impact of phenomenology and Heidegger's thought on theology. But could you just make a few references to how it has also impacted some significant theologians?
Yeah, I think, probably, Dr. Shimio can speak more on that. But I think, Heidegger's challenge to the fundamental concept or category itself drastically changes the speaking of the being of God. So like process theology, and others, rather than staying on the speculative metaphysics, they had to think about how to begin and how to see being, including being of God, from the perspective of meaning, and have to, because if you someone hold the primacy of empty space concept of time and space, linear concept of time, and a Newtonian concept of space, and even if you speak of God, then God is like a dog in the universe, a thing in the universe, and you cannot change that perspective. So, but I think Heidegger impacted the theologian is the step back from the metaphysics and reconstruct the concept of time and space and subject-object, and how to approach being itself. So,
I think of, as you speak, I'm reminded of Paul Tillich, and emphasize God as the kind of ground of being. But let me go. Thank you for that. Thank you for indulging my questions. I like to turn to some we have here. Let's see. Let me find them. Okay, this is from Shizoni Ngoma. Hello, Dr. Noto. Great lecture. Question for you. How can the bracketing, which you spoke of, and phenomenological reduction be applied to avoid biases in data interpretation when the researcher has a prior knowledge of the studied phenomenon? As Padilla Diaz suggested, I think avoiding biases in data interpretation may be difficult to avoid. What are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, I originally started with Husserl and like presuppositionlessness, bracketing your presupposition and so forth. But I eventually gave up Husserl and moved to the Heidegger's and more agreed with him, and that perfect presuppositionlessness is impossible, and human understanding is necessarily interpretive, and pre-knowledge is needed. And so I think the more or less, when you dig any researchers, is presuppositions and where he set the beginning and what kind of setting he has. Then you see all kinds of dogmatic assumptions. It's like a dogma, dogmatic assumption is rampant in not only in religion. In religion, we can see everywhere, and in science as well. So the example is, I said that philosophy of mind, almost all of them are trying to explain the origin of self or all mental phenomena through the physiological, chemical imbalance and the phenomena of brain.
No.
So that is their assumptions. So always I think including philosophers, and everyone tended to hold on to certain assumptions and without knowing if it is justifiable or not. So, phenomenology is more like, I think, a stance or spirit, and the spirit of trying to go back and see where you stand and how to start, and whether your setting itself is fruitful or justifiable or work or doesn't work. So it is not the kind of a method. It is not a method which allow you to do everything perfect, but rather it is a stance, an approach, and perpetual effort of trying to set yourself to in my term, authenticity. So try to bring discourse or thinking authenticity. So that is, I think, what the phenomenologists are trying to do.
Just quickly, if we think in terms of we often use the term, boy, that's a very subjective interpretation versus a more objective. Could you understand the effort to the things themselves to be a broadened understanding of being more objective, but expanding that range?
Yeah, so strictly speaking, they try to avoid the subjectivity, objectivity terminology. So they try to see intersubjectivity. So even the subjectivity is not the personal inward, but rather it is a shared sphere.
Yeah.
So they're trying to see how this harmonic sphere is a shared sphere with your place and other place, rather than having a clear division of subjectivity is personal, objectivity is public kind.
Yeah.
So try to find a more kind of a different way to make sense of it.
No,
So,
thank you. Dr. Noda, Magnus Larson asked this very interesting question. Would you say that phenomenological reduction can help us take God's viewpoint?
Well, yeah, I think it depends on how you define phenomenological reduction. If it's a Husserlian sense, I would say no. because I agree with Zen Buddhist. Bracketing is not possible as a mental act. And religious knowledge requires your being. So your transformative experience is a place where truth is revealed. So unless you change, you don't see what that is. So bracketing, I think in the sense of more existential transformation, maybe yes, but I think it is still perspectival.
Yeah.
So never ever, I think if you say God's point of view, you say if it is definitive, all encompassing, once for all, and universal truth or something. And I don't think that it doesn't happen that way. Always, I think human understanding is be it God or whatever, is revealed to the extent you are open. So your openness limit what you can see. So horizon, your horizon limit what you can see. So the bracketing is, I think, is a perpetual attempt, constant attempt of trying to be authentic. And to me, it is, consistent with a kind of a Taoist idea of let it be.
Yeah.
So,
Dr. Noda, I'm going to read some of the remaining questions. We need to wrap up. There's some very good questions. Just one from Marta Maria Carvalho. What do we intend or mean by phenomena? And rather than you answer, maybe you can just jot them down, because this may be woven into your final remarks, as well as to kind of Dr. Andrew Wilson, also on our faculty, please give some remarks about how to apply your conclusions to unification thought. And they've been reading each other's minds, because Dr. Selliver says, based on your phenomenological approach, how would you approach unification thought? So they want a little bit of Robert Duffy really loves your presentation, but he says this the difficulty of escaping presupposition or prejudice makes even speaking itself very discouraging. How do we overcome that problem, he asks. So you really provoke some good thought here.
I see.
Elio Roman talks about that throughout history, kind of, maybe you'd say, objectivity has been associated with the male mind, and they do not differentiate the female mind from everything from the male perspective. How does phenomenology address this issue? So I'll stop there. And wonderful questions, but I'll leave it to you in a short time to kind of make some closing comments.
Okay, thank you. Phenomenology, phenomena is whatever is disclosed. So, social phenomena is everything appears as a social. That's a phenomena, and so the question is more of how to approach. So sociologists have a certain set of categories and concept, then they classify it. And phenomenological approach is basically to examine that set itself, with a concept, framework, methodology, and whether that is appropriate to the things we really experience it. Is there a better way to frame it? So it is more like a meta-philosophical question of how to approach things. So, and as for the unification thought, As a faculty of UTS, I don't know how much I can say, but I think the biggest problem of unification thought, it does not address the approach, how to approach. So, and professional philosophers are interested in, rather than developing a body of knowledge, but how, or how you start. So that element is missing. So that's why when the philosopher read the unification thought book, they open a few pages and they close it, and they are not interested in. So if someone is interested in developing a unification thought, I think we have to start how to approach. Even the, like a pattern of Sun-san, Hyun-san, inner Sun-san, what is it? And what is it? What are you going to do? And whether that approach is justifiable or not. That is an effort somebody has to make. So.
I think Robert Duffy's question, I think he's simply confessing that he became a Zen Buddhist.
I see. Yeah, I think I think what I'm trying to do is I try to be, the concept I'm having to answer that question is again the authenticity. What is a authentic discourse, and what is authentic way of being, and by being authentic means basically, I think I agree with Heidegger and Augustine. Let it be. By let it be, things will disclose. Just like doctor and medicine do not cure your health. It is your natural capacity of healing and keeping a balance that heal yourself. And the doctor and the medicine is like a stimuli and help. But it is your natural mechanism of a body that make you balanced. So, similar to the, I think by being authentic, you can let it be, and by being yourself, by become authentic self, and living your own life, then I think that is what I think phenomenology and Taoism and Zen Buddhism are trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So. No, thank you. I can't help but see Dr. Wilson and Dr. Sullivan there. Do you have a quick comment on Dr. Noda's comment about unification thought?
Oh, yeah, I think it's a really excellent and very wise comment. That is, the presupposition of the unification thought book is basically, this is revelation of Reverend Moon, and therefore we have to take it seriously for that. But that's not really that doesn't really examine the starting point. And the question is, why is this particular approach of Reverend Moon and the truth that he reveals valid? So maybe you need a theology of revelation. What is the basis of revelation? How can we judge how can we make clear the validity of revelation? Now, I think in Reverend Moon's case, he lived it. So what you were saying about being, I think applies very well to him, because he is a person who lived what he taught. But I find that there's a huge difference between people who live what they teach, like Reverend Moon, and philosophers who just sit at a desk and think.
All right. All right, Dr. Selliver.
Okay,
And
just
I'm going to
very,
ask Dr. Ward to comment.
just very briefly, thank you. It reminds me of the phrase about who's speaking to whom, and we're in each other's context, so you can see the thoughts that Dr. Noda you presented are bouncing around back and forth, which is great. And as for understanding the teachings of Reverend Sun Myung Moon, for example, the question of who is speaking to whom also appears, because it's very contextual and on all different levels. So I think this is a really intriguing point of view that you're sharing with us. So I recall at a conference, Unification Thought Conference some years ago, you pointed out, Dr. Noda, that we really should begin at least with epistemology, something like that, and not brain stuff, but this meaning, epistemology of meaning, in order to get unification thought off the ground in a way that will be relevant to our experience. So I definitely appreciate all that you've shared. Thank you.
Dr. Ward? Any comment?
To throw this out there, 1 second. Dr. Noda and also Dr. Walsh, thank you for your very fine presentation, Dr. Noda. I had to study phenomenology at a certain point in my university life. I never understood a thing. Even if I got a good grade in the course, I didn't understand anything. So I thought you really put things across very, very clearly. And I think the issues that were raised concerning unification thought were important ones here. Really, once I spoke to Dr. Sang-Hoon Lee, and I spoke about unification thought, and I talked about the challenges that I felt if you give someone the unification thought text. And what he said to me was, he said, unification thought as it exists is based upon having already accepted the principle. And I think a lot of our members don't understand that. But the principle itself, it has certain types of deep challenges. It causes you to rethink about Jesus' life. It causes you to look at this dynamic of elder to younger brother. It invites your reflection upon the purpose of life and the origin of evil. There's a whole series of things that you interface with within divine principle. But in the case of unification thought, almost immediately it's almost contemplative. I feel it's almost a type of an Eastern thought, if you will, in many respects, unification thought itself. And it's an experience rather than, I think, a traditional interface with philosophy. So I appreciate the fact that this is being raised here, because I think it's an important matter for us to explore. I guess my question, but I'm not gonna, you don't have to answer tonight, Dr. Noda, but I'm always interested by the interface between phenomenology and existentialism, which Dr. Walsh touched upon a little bit, because I think that's a really important piece. And I think particularly in terms of French thought, somehow there's an assumption that that phenomenology comes out of existentialism, which you've made clear is not the complete truth. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you for a fine presentation.
Thank you.
Well, Dr. Noda, you really succeeded in stimulating a lot of great thought and insights, and leave us wanting to discuss it further. So we hope you'll come back for part 2 of this presentation, and we're all grateful. So I think I'm going to, at this point, any final word, Dr. Noda? Anything?
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you for
Thank
joining.
you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dean Stephen Boyd. Dean Boyd.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walsh. Thank you so much, Dr. Noda. Wonderful presentation. I don't know if you were watching. My job is to kind of watch who's on the call and help people from the background. And everyone stayed on. Everyone stayed on and was, I think, kind of glued to your presentation. I certainly know that I'm going to take your class next semester, Dr. Noda. You've converted me. So thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight from different parts of the US, from Canada, from around the world. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. We really do appreciate it. I want to kind of give you insight into our next faculty roundtable session, which will be on the 28th of March. The speaker, our featured speaker, will be Dr. Luan Rouse, who, as you know, is an adjunct associate professor of ministry here at UTS and also president of the American Clergy Leadership Conference. His topic is going to be exploring unification faith and world religions, a comparative study. So please be on the lookout for an invitation in your email about that coming up at the end of the month. We thank you again for being here. Thank you, Dr. Noda. Thank you, Dr. Wallace. As always, a masterful hand you have. There's my little dog in the background. Sorry about that. Thank you all. So if I'm going to put it on gallery mode, you can unmute and you can say hello to each other before we say goodnight. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.